I will record this while I am still capable of knowing where I end, and the ice begins. My name is Inquisitor Elissa Var, or at least, that is the name I recall. These words are spoken into a cracked Vox recorder strapped to my chest, powered by a flickering thermal cell. If this record reaches another, let it serve as both confession and warning. For there are things buried beneath cold places in this galaxy, things far older than the Imperium, things we should never have touched. We were dispatched to research Outpost Cryotheos 12 on the frozen moon of Gethsemane Beta, orbiting a gas giant whose orange clouds churn like a sleepless rolling sea. The station's last transmission was a garbled, frantic prayer looped over emergency Vox channels, repeated until silence overtook it. No Vox distress coordinates, no final identification, just one phrase, strained and distorted. We have seen a shape in the ice. It watches us from below. Then, nothing. 2 weeks without contact. That was enough to warrant my arrival. The descent was uneventful at first. Our lander, Sanction's Blade, broke the cloud cover and descended toward the ice shelf that stretched in every direction like an unbroken, blinding desert. Wind howled across the surface, whipping frozen dust into white ribbons that danced and dissolved as quickly as they formed. The moon had no right to be silent. Worlds like this usually groaned, ice plates shifted, fractured, refroze. But here, everything felt suspended, as though the world held its breath. My retinue accompanied me. Proctor Helena Dry, Adeptus Arbites, iron-spined and unsmiling. Engineer Havelock, his mechadendrites twitching even when still. Guardsman Sergeant Joran Vale, veteran of 13 campaigns, never spoke unless spoken to. And novice scribe Lumin Cade, assigned for transcription and record integrity, barely 20 years old. He had never seen a dead world before. The landing struts touched down with a hiss of vented atmosphere. The temperature outside registered at 71 degrees, though the ice radiated a deeper cold, one not measured in mere degrees, a cold that felt aware. The outpost lay half buried in frost, steel siding rimed with crystalline growths. The structure's beacon lights were dark. No smoke from vents, no movement on rampways, no bodies outside either. That was strange. Research stations abandoned in haste often left their dead outside, especially in a panic. But here, the emptiness felt deliberate. "Helmets sealed," I commanded. Helena nodded and cycled her visor. Joran checked his rifle. Havelock emitted a burst of Binharic static like a frustrated sigh. The scribe fumbled his respirator, gloved fingers shaking. We advanced. The closer we approached the main airlock, the more the ice changed. It was no longer smooth. It bore patterns, lines, carvings, as though something had been scratched into the surface. At first I assumed them to be tool marks, percussive strikes, from picks or drills. But then I noticed the curvature, the symmetry. The lines wound in continuous spirals, intersecting perfectly in rotational sequences. The patterns repeated with increasing complexity around the structure like glyphs, but not runes of the Imperium. These shapes were older, wrong, designed not to be read, but to compel. Cade stopped short. "Is this scripture?" "No scripture I've ever seen," Helena muttered. Havelock leaned close, mechadendrites tasting the ice surface. "No tool marks, precision impossible for human hand, depth uniform to submillimetric variance, suggest non-mechanical formation." I stared. He was right. These symbols were grown, not carved. The ice had formed this way. Something had shaped it from within. A tremor rippled through the ground, subtle, like a large, slow exhale shifting through a hollow chest deep below. Cade stepped back, startled. "What was that?" "Movement," Joran said. His voice was steady, but his grip tightened on his lasrifle. We reached the airlock. Its control panel was shattered, as though struck from the inside. No signs of explosive force, more like pressure. The metal bent outward, bulging, cracked. Helena forced the manual override wheel, It resisted, groaned, and then hissed as the internal seals broke. A gust of stale air rolled over us, rot, oil, ozone discharge, and something else, warmth. The station should have been freezing, but the air that escaped the hatch was warm, almost humid. Heat in a facility with no power. Rule broken. Thermodynamics defied. We entered. Interior lights flickered weakly, powered by something deep inside the station, something that shouldn't exist. The walls were streaked with melted frost, dripping slowly like veins of glass. The hum we heard earlier became clearer now. A deep frequency resonance, a vibration that I felt more in my bones than ears. Cade whispered, "It feels like singing." No one corrected him. He was right. We moved down the primary corridor. The place was torn apart. Equipment ripped from mounts, doors half open, half melted. Some surfaces were slick with frozen blood, but there were no bodies. Only signs of movement, drag patterns, disturbed footprints that ended abruptly, scratches on walls, frenzied, directional. Helena activated internal vox. "This is Proctor Helena Dre of the Arbites. Cryotheos 12, respond." Only the hum answered. We reached the operations hub. Screens flickered, damaged but functional. Havelock patched into a terminal. His mechadendrites chirped and whirred as he sifted fragmented logs. Last recorded internal activity, 14 days prior. Sequence irregular. Data corrupted. Attempting repair. "Focus on final communications," I said. Static, garble, a strained voice. Human, broken, whispering. "It is under us. It was never ice. It sees. We didn't dig. It rose to meet us." Then screaming. Then silence. Cade covered his mouth. Joran swore softly. Helena asked, "What in the throne's name were they studying here?" I answered, though the words tasted like ash. Something that should have stayed buried. The hum deepened. Floor vibrations increased. This time the tremor was unmistakable. Something moved directly beneath us. A long, slow shift, like a massive shape sliding through the ice. The outpost was not built on solid ground. It was built on a hollow. A void. No, not a void. A presence. Havelock's mechadendrites snapped upright. Seismic anomaly detected. Depth reading unstable. Subsurface mass movement measured at... The station shuddered violently. A distant cracking sound echoed like thunder, but muffled, smothered by unimaginable weight. Cade screamed as he stumbled, falling to one knee. Lights flickered out. Emergency strips glowed red. The hum changed pitch. No longer background resonance. Now it was breathing, slow, rhythmic, deep, coming from the ice beneath our feet. Helena turned, voice sharp. "We're not alone in here." The overhead speaker system crackled, then softly, like a whisper seeping through a wall. "We are still here." Not spoken, not broadcast, remembered. The station had been listening. The ice had learned how to speak, and it was answering. I felt the temperature drop, not colder, but emptier, like warmth was being undone, peeled away. Joran raised his weapon. "Contacts." "No," I said, because I understood. There were no contacts. There were eyes, thousands of them, watching from beneath the ice, waiting. The floor beneath us creaked, a sound like the world stretching a joint it had not moved in eons. The first crack split the corridor behind us. We ran, and as we did, I finally understood why the research station sent no final distress beacon. Not because they were dead, but because something down there wanted silence. And it was still listening. We sealed the bulkhead behind us as the corridor splintered open, ice shards exploding through ferrosteel plating like bone fragments from a shattered ribcage. The station groaned, a sound not mechanical, but animal, as though the structure itself was being flexed by something alive beneath it. Vox alarms whined briefly before choking out under interference. Red emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting everything in a dull, blood-tinted haze. We ran until the tremor stopped. Only then did we allow ourselves to breathe. My voice recorder crackled back to life mid-stroke, capturing my exhale. Inquisitor Var, retinue intact, structural breach in primary corridor, unknown seismic cause, situation, escalating. Helena wiped frost and condensation from the inside of her visor. Whatever is under the station is moving, and it's not slow anymore. Joran did not respond. He was staring at the floor panels beneath us, his jaw tense, as though expecting them to rupture at any moment. I could not blame him. Havelock was already interfacing with the next accessible terminal, his mechadendrites weaving into frayed data ports like metallic roots, burrowing for nutrients. The screen flickered alive with fractured red glyphs and static distorted schematics. "This station's architecture is compromised," he intoned, his voice modulated by a flat Vox intonation. "Load-bearing supports deteriorated by 43%. Ice displacement detected under Central Research Annex. Strong gravitational anomaly detected. Vector downward. A sink, not fracture." "A sink?" Cade repeated, trembling. "Like a void?" "Like a mouth," Havelock replied. The boy went pale. I stepped toward the observation viewport set into the wall. Beyond it was the station's central excavation shaft, a cylindrical drop bored straight through the upper layers of the moon's crust to expose the ice strata below. When this place was operational, the shaft would have been filled with cranes, survey platforms, data pylons. Now it was filled only with fog and shifting light. A faint glow pulsed deep inside the shaft, not bright, not vibrant, but rhythmic. A heartbeat, racing slow and steady in the depths. Helena stood beside me. "Something's down there." "No," I said. "Something is coming up." The station groaned again, this time from above. The ceiling trembled, fine powder snow raining down in drifting curtains of white. Joran stepped into a defensive stance, sweeping his rifle across the upper gantry walkways. Nothing, no shapes, no shadows, just emptiness, which was somehow worse. Faint scraping echoed from somewhere deeper in the facility, irregular, deliberate. Not the sound of metal fatigue or thermal fracture. No, this was something large dragging something heavier across the deck plating. Movement. Slow. Drawing nearer. "Command spire," I said. "Now, we regain control of station systems or we die inside a steel coffin." We advanced. The command spire was located 4 transit halls away, past laboratories and habitation wings. The corridors we moved through bore signs not of battle, but of panic. Trays overturned, medical kits spilled, a trail of ration packs, ripped open and half-eaten, not by teeth, but scooped. Claw marks. No, not claw, not tool. Something soft had dragged through the metal, deforming it like wet clay. We passed a viewing window into the hydroponics lab. Frost had overtaken every growing surface. The nutrient vines were brittle, frozen mid-coil. But the glass itself... Glass does not usually bend. This glass had. Its curvature was warped inward, like something pressed from the other side. Cade whispered, "There were people in here, weren't there?" Helena answered, voice low and controlled. "Bodies don't vanish on their own." "Unless something took them," Joran said. We continued in silence. Havelock halted abruptly. Residual heat signature detected. Recent. Living presence. "Alive?" I asked. Havelock computed, inhaling softly, a sound his mechanized lungs should not have been able to produce. "Yes." He led us toward the medici ward, doors smeared with blood streaks and frost. Inside, we found a survivor. A woman, lab coat torn, skin frost-burned raw, fingernails shattered, as though she had clawed herself free of something. She was curled in the corner beneath an overturned surgical table, whispering hoarsely to herself. Helena moved first, approaching cautiously. I held up a hand. No sudden light, no loud noise. Slow. She crouched, lowering her weapon. "Researcher, identify yourself." The woman's eyes flicked open. They were violet. Human eyes are not violet, not without warp touch. She stared at Helena, but when she spoke, It was to me. "It wakes." Her voice was cracked and wet with dehydration. It was never sleeping. We just didn't know how to listen before. "Name," I commanded. Her lips trembled. "Dr. Ada Lenhart, Xenogeology Division. What happened here?" Her breath hitched, half sob, half laugh. "We were drilling. We thought we were uncovering glacial layers, memory ice, perfectly preserved strata that could record climate cycles across millennia. But the patterns were too perfect, too regular." She grasped my sleeve, fingers ice cold. "The ice isn't natural. It's grown. A lattice structure. Purposeful. Containment. We opened it. We opened its prison." Cade stepped back. "Throne," Dr. Lenhart's voice lowered to a whisper. "We didn't dig down. Something beneath us reached up. It pressed against the drill. It answered us. And when we heard the voice, we listened." Helena asked, "Where are the rest of the researchers?" Dr. Lenhart slowly looked toward the floor. "They went beneath. Beneath the ice?" "No," she whispered. "Beneath themselves." A deep, thrumming pulse vibrated through the station. Lights dimmed, then surged, bright enough to blind, then cut to darkness. A sound followed, not animal, not mechanical. A chorus, dozens of voices, hundreds, singing through the ventilation shafts, in languages no human throat could produce. Helena raised her weapon. "We move, now!" Dr. Lenhart tried to stand, collapsed. Joran lifted her over his shoulder with practiced efficiency. We pushed forward toward the command spire. The singing grew louder as we advanced, echoing through ductwork, vibrating the walls as though the station itself were a vast lung filling with cold, exhaled memory. Then, a shadow, crossing the hallway ahead, tall, lithe, wrong in proportions, too long in the arms, too narrow in the chest. Its head turned toward us, no eyes, just smooth, pale flesh. It moved silently, too silently. Joran sighted in. Target acquired. "Do not fire," I said, because the shadow had not seen us. It had heard us. The humming we heard was coming from it. We backed away slowly, step by step, until the shadow faded into another corridor, melting into the red haze. When it was gone, Dr. Lenhart's whisper returned. "That wasn't one of us anymore. That was someone who listened too long." We reached the elevator to the command spire. Havelock accessed the controls. The elevator descended. And then it went down farther than it should, past the spire level, into darkness. Metal cables strained. The cabin groaned. The temperature dropped. Frost crept across the walls in fractal veins. Cade clutched my arm. "Inquisitor. We're not going to the control deck." "No," I said quietly. "We are being taken somewhere else." The elevator shuddered to a stop. Doors slid open. A blast of cold air struck us, wet, ancient, and deep. We stepped out onto a narrow platform overlooking a vast hollow cavern, carved entirely from black ice. And far below, in impossible depth, the shape moved again, watching us, listening. Our footsteps echoed weakly in the cavernous dark, swallowed seconds later by the yawning abyss below. The ice chamber was larger than any natural formation should be, smooth, geometric, intentional. The cavern walls did not glisten like frost, but absorbed light, turning every lumen into drowning shadow. The air was colder here, colder in a way that felt like absence, not temperature. Joran adjusted his grip around Dr. Lenhart, who clung weakly to consciousness. Helena scanned the walkway ahead with sweeping arcs of her sidearm's mounted lamp. "This platform is not on any station schematic." "No," I said, "because this part of the facility was not built. It was revealed." Havelock emitted a burst of static through his Vox synth, his version of discomfort. "This substructure predates station construction by at least several million cycles. Geological dating impossible. The ice formations below show signs of lattice reinforcement, crystalline self-arrangement. purposeful growth. So, Helena murmured, the ice is alive. Not alive, I corrected. Engineered. Cade shivered, not from cold, but from understanding. This isn't a moon, is it? I didn't answer, because the truth had not yet finished revealing itself. Across the chamber, something shifted. Not movement, pressure, as though the vast, unseen thing below adjusted its posture, acknowledging us. The walkway trembled just enough to make every muscle in my back tense. We moved forward along the suspended steel catwalk. Beneath us, a chasm that dropped into absolute darkness. Above us, nothing. No ceiling, only a height too vast for our lamps to reach. Somewhere high above, something dripped. The drops took 6 full seconds to hit the ice below. A cavern that should not exist, a shape that should not breathe. Walls formed not by nature, but by memory, intention, containment. I thumbed the vox bead on my collar. This is Inquisitor Elissa Var, Cryotheos 12 Expedition. Sub-level structure confirmed, presence confirmed. This moon is compromised at the tectonic level. Request immediate orbital quarantine. Repeat, immediate quarantine. Only static answered. Thick, heavy static. Not the random hiss of interference, but something more like muffling, like sound being pressed into silence. Helena glanced at me. No signal. No permission. Whatever intelligence existed below did not simply block frequencies. It was listening and choosing what sound could leave. We reached the end of the walkway. A platform stretched into what resembled an observation deck, though no human architect would design such an angle. The railing slanted downward, the platform curved into a crescent shape, and the floor inclined minutely toward the abyss, as though inviting one to fall. Havelock's lamps flared brighter as his mechadendrites interfaced with a crystalline console embedded into the platform. The structure illuminated in an eerie blue glow, runes pulsing like a heartbeat. Cade staggered backward. I've seen those shapes before. Where? Helena snapped. In the research logs, Cade stammered. The scientists recorded them repeating throughout the ice samples, but smaller, much smaller, like seeds. Seeds. My blood ran cold. Not metaphor, not analogy. Seeds. Something down here was growing. Havelock's optics flickered. His voice changed pitch. Flat, mechanical. These symbols are not instructional. They are phonetic. A broadcast. Repetition sequence suggests communication. Can you translate it? I asked. Affirmative. Attempting. His mechadendrites froze. Helena raised her weapon. Havelock? The engine seer stood perfectly still, too still. Then he spoke. But it was not his voice. It was deeper, resonant, layered, like a choir speaking through one throat. Listen, Cade screamed. Helena drew her weapon. Joran aimed. But I listened. The cavern vibrated. Not with sound, but with memory. Not a spoken word, but a sensation. Ice is not silent. Ice remembers pressure. Ice remembers every weight that has ever rested upon it. Every footstep. Every breath. Every corpse. Every thought. The voice spoke again, shaping Havelock's metal throat. We are still here! My lungs constricted. The phrase. The same one that played in the station's final Vox recording. Helena snapped. Break link, now! She lunged, but before she could reach Havelock, the ice across the cavern floor shuddered and rose. Not cracked, not splintered. Rose. As though something beneath the ice was pushing upward. A silhouette formed under the translucent surface. Enormous, sinuous, like the spine of some titanic leviathan shifting in its sleep. Lenhart woke fully, eyes wide with terror. No, she croaked. No, no, no. We were wrong. We thought the thing was in the ice. Her voice broke. It is the ice. The humming returned, louder now, vibrating bone and thought. Havelock jerked violently, dropping to his knees as the console flared bright. The cavern lights dimmed. Helena grabbed Havelock's shoulders, shaking him. Break the connection! He looked up, but his eyes were no longer his. They were white, not glowing, empty. The voice spoke through him again, stronger, layered with sorrow and triumph. This world was not meant for you. The ice leviathan shifted. Joran fired. A lasbolt hit the creature through the ice and vanished. No scorch, no crack, no mark. The shot simply ceased to be. Cade dropped to the floor, covering his ears. Though the sound was not sound, it was pressure, warping sanity like heated metal. I seized Havelock's mechadendrite bundle and tore the cable from the crystal console. The engine seer convulsed, sparks erupting from his back. He collapsed, twitching, servos misfiring. Silence. The cavern's heartbeat slowed. The humming faded. For a moment, just a moment, I could think. Helena checked Havelock's pulse actuator. He's alive, but whatever touched him didn't let go cleanly. He will endure, I said. Whether that was fact or hope, I could not say. The platform trembled beneath our feet, no longer shifting gently. The ice leviathan rose fully, lifting the entire cavern floor several meters, cracking struts, bending steel. It had shape now, limbs, segments, ridges, a titanic organism suspended through the moon's entire subsurface network. No, not organism, cathedral, Dr. Lenhart whispered, voice thin as smoke. It is not a creature, it is a prison church, built to hold something inside, and we opened it. Then everything shifted. The cavern lights flickered, the walkway jolted, and the platform began tilting downward, as though the abyss were pulling us in. We ran. The ice behind us shattered upward, something enormous pushing from below. Shards exploded into the air like white shrapnel. A tendril of ice. No, not ice. Something growing through ice, lashed across the walkway, tearing the steel apart like parchment. Joran leapt, Lenhart over his shoulder. Helena grabbed Cade and shoved him ahead. Havelock stumbled, sparks trailing from ruptured ports. I was last. The platform gave way behind me, and I fell, only for Helena to catch my gauntlet, her grip white-knuckled, jaw clenched with effort. The abyss howled below, cold wind rising like a roar. I looked down, and the thing in the ice looked back, dozens of violet eyes opening below the surface, not glowing, reflecting us, watching, remembering. The humming returned, stronger, inside my chest, inside my bones, inside my thoughts. We remember you. Helena pulled me up. The walkway collapsed the moment my boots hit steel. We ran into the rising darkness behind us. As the thing beneath the ice began to wake, we did not stop running until the cavern's ceiling was a memory behind us, and the steel corridors once again enclosed us in their coffin embrace. The station's emergency lights flickered in spasms now, no longer rhythmic, but erratic, like a dying pulse, firing in desperate final beats. Emergency power was failing, not drained, consumed. Dr. Lenhart lay on the walkway floor, breathing in shallow rasps. Havelock leaned against a structural pillar, his mechadendrites twitching and spasming in repetitive half-motions, like a machine caught in an infinite loop. Cade knelt beside him, hands trembling as he tried to stabilize the engine seer's power couplings. Joran and Helena took positions at opposite ends of the corridor, weapons raised, forming a silent perimeter. I spoke first because silence now felt like something alive in the air, listening, waiting, coiling. We are reorienting. No panic, no frenzy. We need facts. What we saw was not a creature. It is something structural, something designed. Lenhart coughed, blood spotting her glove. Designed to hold something worse. Her eyes, once human, now held a faint violet ring at the edge of the iris, warp-touched, not fully corrupted, yet, but the seed was there. The research logs, she whispered. There was something we didn't understand, something we misinterpreted. We believed the ice formations were the containment medium, but in truth, the ice itself is the binding organism. She shook, sweat freezing against her skin. The moon is not frozen around something, she said. The moon is the lock. A prison, sealed in crystal memory. unknowably ancient. I crouched beside her, and we cracked the lock. She nodded, eyes unfocused. We thought we were extracting samples, but the ice responded. It listened. It changed. When we drilled deeper, the lattice didn't break. It adapted. It restructured itself to let us through. Cade swallowed. It let you in. It wanted to be opened, Lenhart whispered. The floor tremored again, not violently, slow, soft, like the shifting of an enormous weight changing positions somewhere far below. The station creaked. Frost formed across the walls again, this time not in natural fractal blooms, but in repeating glyphs. The same symbols from the cavern, repeating, propagating, like a language the station itself was now speaking. Helena traced one symbol with the barrel of her weapon. They're growing. The ice is reproducing. Havelock jerked once, violently, and then went still. His eyes snapped open, white, pupilless, but not with the same stolen emptiness from before. This time, there was resistance. He was fighting something inside his skull. He spoke with effort, each word forced through grinding teeth. Signal. Found. Joran stepped closer. What signal? Havelock's jaw twitched, metal grinding on metal. Not outgoing. Incoming. No external transmitter. Internal broadcast. Originating from subcore vaults. Subcore. Where the main power regulators and cryoreactors were located, and where the research director's private lab had been stationed. Location? I asked. Havelock's head jerked sharply, like his neck was being yanked by invisible hands. Level Gamma 7. Helena swore under her breath. That section flooded and sealed during the collapse. Half the facility maps show that area structurally unsalvageable. Then we go by the other half, I said. Cade's voice trembled. Inquisitor, if that place was sealed, it was sealed for a reason. Yes, I said, and we now know exactly what that reason was. Dr. Lenhart tried to sit up, shaking as though the station's vibrations were passing straight through her bloodstream. You don't understand, she whispered. Gamma 7 housed the listening chamber. That's where we first heard. The voice. The voice. The same one that now thrummed faintly through every surface, carried like current through ice. If the moon itself was a lock, then the listening chamber was the keyhole. Joran stepped forward, adjusting his rifle's charge pack with calm precision. Then we close it. I nodded. We move. But before we could take a step, the lights went out. Total black. The hum stopped. Silence. A silence so complete I felt my pulse become the only sound in the universe. Then, a whisper. Not from walls. Not from ice. From inside our helmets. Why do you run? Cade gasped, backing against the wall. The whisper continued, soft, curious, patient. You heard us. You listened first. We only answered. The air temperature dropped sharply. Frost crawled up my visor like veins. Shapes emerged in the darkness. Tall, thin, stretched silhouettes like figures standing motionless in a fog. Not approaching. Not reaching. Just observing. Dr. Lenhart broke. No, please, stop, please. A hand landed on her arm. Helena's hand. Firm. Grounding. Focus. Breathe. You're still you. The whisper responded, almost amused. Not for long. The emergency lighting flickered back, dim, blood red. The silhouettes were gone. But the frost symbols were everywhere now, repeating, multiplying. We needed to move. Now. We descended toward Gamma 7. The hallways grew narrower, colder. The steel floors became coated in thick ice, forcing Joran and Helena to brace every step. Cade stumbled often, but Helena was always there, pulling him upright before fear could take hold. As we moved deeper, the station changed. Ceilings grew lower. Walls bowed inward. The lights flickered in a rhythmic pulse, like breathing. The temperature no longer felt cold, just numb. like sensation itself was beginning to die. At last, we reached the sealed blast door of Gamma 7. It was covered in glyphs, layered, dense, recursive, not grown, carved from the inside. Havelock stepped forward. His voice was hollow. This door was not sealed to contain what was inside. He traced the symbols with a trembling metal hand. It was sealed to contain what left. Helena exhaled slowly. So whatever broke out, did it through this door? I placed my palm against the ice-scarred steel. Beneath the door, something shifted. Slow, massive, aware. Lenhart stared at the door, her eyes wide with recognition and terror. "We thought we discovered a voice," she whispered. "No!" Her breath fogged the freezing air. "It discovered us." The whisper returned, but this time, it spoke from behind the door. "Open!" And the door began to unlock, on its own. We raised our weapons, but we all knew. We were already too late. The blast door shuddered as internal pressure equalized, gears grinding like ancient teeth gnashing after millennia of disuse. Steam hissed from hydraulic vents, mixing with the vapor of our breathing. My visor display flickered with proximity warnings. There was movement behind the door, but not the frantic motion of something charging. It was patient, waiting, as though it wanted us to open it. Joran steadied his rifle, jaw rigid. "This is a mistake." Helena didn't disagree. "We don't have a choice." She was right. The infection, the influence, was spreading through the station like a signal through a relay. If we didn't cut it off at the source, we would fail before we ever left this moon. The door opened with a deep metallic groan that echoed through the corridor, like the sigh of something buried, exhaling cold for the first time in ages. Frost and vapor poured outward, cloaking everything in a veil of white. Gamma 7 was not dark. It was glowing. Soft, pulsing illumination emanated from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, all coated in that same crystalline lattice, those repeating glyphs spreading like veins of light inside flesh. It looked less like a room now, and more like the interior of something alive, with the station walls serving as decaying bone beneath a layer of growing ice skin. Dr. Lenhart made a choking sound in her throat, not horror, recognition. This was not here before," she whispered. "The chamber used to be sterile, steel, plain. It's changing faster now." Havelock's mechadendrites writhed in reflexive agitation, but his voice remained sedate, even reverent. "The lattice is synchronizing, accelerating. We are now within the primary growth field." "Speak in human terms," Helena snapped. Havelock paused for a fraction of a second, something he never did unless something was wrong. "It is aware of us." His voice was not fearful. It was factual. The chamber's centerpiece dominated the room, a perfectly circular pit descending into darkness. Around it, consoles, once human-made, had fused into the floor, their surfaces now etched with glyphs. Wires twisted like nerves, pipes curled like rib cages, and suspended above the pit, bound by strands of crystalline lattice like spider silk frozen in motion, was a human form. A body, or what had once been one. The flesh was pale, translucent, limbs elongated, torso stretched as though sculpted like candle wax pulled in slow motion. The head tilted downward, eyes open and glassy. No breath, no twitch, no life. Cade gagged, turning away. Helena's voice lowered. "Emperor preserve. That's Director Halleck's." Dr. Lenhart shook her head, tears freezing as they fell. "No, that's what's left of him." The whispering started again, not with words this time, but with memory. I saw Hallex as he once was, standing at a briefing table, hands trembling with excitement as he declared they had found something beneath the ice worth studying. A breakthrough. A revelation. His eyes alight with hunger to be the one who discovered the impossible. Knowledge as salvation. No, knowledge as devotion. The whisper intruded, gentle and cold. He asked. We answered. My hand moved to my temple as a piercing ache burrowed behind my eyes. Cade cried out, clutching his skull. Helena gritted her teeth, refusing to kneel. Joran stood immobilized, jaw clenched so tight blood leaked from between his teeth. Only Havelock did not recoil. He stepped toward the suspended form. His voice was calm, almost tender. He listened first, Lenhart screamed, voice tearing raw. Don't go near it! Too late. Havelock reached out. A pulse of sound, not heard but felt, burst through the chamber. My bones vibrated. My vision whitened. My breath caught, frozen mid-inhale, as if the air had hardened inside my lungs. The chamber blurred. And I was inside a memory, not mine, not human. A frozen plain under a sky of burning stars, mountains of glass and bone, structures like cathedrals built from frozen nerve tissue. A civilization, not dead, but dormant, waiting beneath ice sheets deeper than any drill could reach. A culture that did not die. It chose to sleep, locked inside the moon, in crystalline mind architecture, not dreaming, remembering. And then, we came. We cut into the ice. We pressed our ears against its crystal walls. We listened. And the prison woke. I gasped as the vision snapped, returning me to the chamber. The suspended body, Halleck's, twitched, mouth cracking open, as if bones beneath the face were trying to remember how to move. He did not breathe. He spoke. We are memory. His voice was layered. Many voices. Thousands. A choir of minds fused into one. Dr. Lenhart fell to her knees. We didn't awaken something. We joined it. The pit below Halleck's glowed brighter, deep violet pulsing like a heartbeat. Helena raised her weapon. We sever the connection, now. No! Lenhart screamed, reaching toward her. If you break the lattice, the containment fails. Whatever is beneath will fully... The suspended body convulsed violently, spine arching, jaw tearing wide. The whisper thundered across the room. We do not want to be free. We want to be remembered. The ice beneath our feet cracked. Veins of light spread. The moon itself responded. I understood then. This was not a breach. This was not an awakening. This was assimilation. The researchers did not die. They were translated, absorbed into the memory ice, added to the choir, and it wanted us too. Joran fired. The lasbolt struck Halleck's suspended form, striking flesh, igniting tissue. The scream that followed was not one voice. It was every voice. A sound that fractured thought. The ice erupted upward, shards forming jagged spires that pierced the ceiling and walls, sealing exits. The chamber tilted, reality itself bending inward, as though spatial geometry were nothing but a suggestion. Helena grabbed my arm. Move! We dragged Havelock and Lenhart and Cade as we sprinted toward the outer corridor, as the ice claws rose to reclaim us, to fold us into memory. The chamber did not collapse. It closed, like a mouth. And behind us, the whisper followed. Soon. You will join us soon. The blast door sealed with a slam. We staggered backward, panting, shaking, slick with frost and terror. No one spoke for several breaths. Then Helena said, voice low and steady, We are not dealing with a creature. I nodded. No. We are dealing with a civilization. Joran looked at me, voice barely more than a gravel whisper. What do we do now? I looked to the floor, to the frost creeping outward like veins of a spreading sickness. We go deeper, because the only way to stop the infection is to reach its heart. No one spoke as we descended deeper into the station. There was no need. The silence said more than words could. The ice spreading along the steel walls no longer formed random fractals. It coalesced into patterns, recursive arcs, spiraling sequences, glyphs repeating like thought loops. The walls were beginning to think in shape. The moon was no longer merely reacting to us. It was remembering us, Every breath, every sound, every fear. We travelled in single file. Helena ahead, weapon raised. Joran behind her, carrying the limping form of Havelock. His mechanical frame twitched with erratic impulses, mechadendrites scraping the floor like the twitching limbs of something dreaming. Cade and Lenhart followed, both silent, both pale. I walked last, because something in me already knew. Whatever followed us, if it followed, would come from behind. We reached the central maintenance spine, the corridor narrowing into a service shaft framed by coolant pipes. Frost webbed across the metal like veins. The hum of the station was gone now. No generators throbbed, no vents breathed. Only the low, distant heartbeat of the thing beneath pulsed through the metal under our feet. Helena checked the map panel embedded in the wall. The display flickered weakly, glitched, distorted, but still functional. A single red beacon pulsed at the deepest accessible point. Primary cryogenic reactor, core relay node, level Omega-9. That's where the containment nexus will be, I said, where the lock was first forged. Cade's voice was thin. Forged? By who? Lenhart answered before I could. Not us. Her voice was distant, eyes unfocused, like she was seeing something in memory that was not hers. It was built by those who came before, not as jailers, as worshippers. Helena turned to her. Worshippers? Dr. Lenhart shivered, not from cold. No one creates a prison this large for something they fear. They create it for something they venerate, something they believe will return. Silence again. But this time it was not the oppressive silence of a tomb. It was the silence of understanding. We reached the lift at the center of the maintenance shaft. Its core panel was covered in frost so thick it looked like coral, living, branching. Helena scraped it clear and pressed the manual release. The lift shuddered, groaned, and began its descent. The hum returned, not from machinery, from below, a deep resonance, like something breathing, slow, steady, alive. The lift descended for far longer than the facility schematics claimed possible. It felt like sinking into a frozen lung, into the hollow ribcage of a titan that should never have been disturbed. The lift halted. Doors slid open with a sigh, and we stepped into Omega-9. The chamber was cathedral vast. Arches of steel and ice rose overhead like rib bones. Massive coolant conduits ran along the floor like arteries. The reactor core sat in the center, once cylindrical, once mechanical, now transformed. It towered like a monolith of frozen flesh and crystal, organic patterns fused with machine lattice, a hybrid of architecture and anatomy. It pulsed faintly with violet light. Cade whispered, awe breaking through fear. It's beautiful. Helena shot him a warning look, but she did not speak, because beauty, here, was simply another form of threat. At the base of the core sat a terminal, one of human make. Console, chair, data tether cables. But like everything else, it had been altered. The chair had fused into the floor. The console's screens were overgrown with crystalline lattice, and in the chair was a person, or what had once been one, frozen in a seated position, eyes wide open, skin stretched tightly across bone, wires threaded into the skull. The ice did not imprison him. It completed him. I approached. Dr. Lenhart exhaled sharply. Assistant Chief Researcher Dorse. He volunteered to monitor the lattice resonance patterns. He believed that communion was possible, I finished. Lenhart nodded, tears freezing along her jaw. He thought the ice was a language. He wanted to learn to speak to it. Havelock jerked upright, his voice suddenly clear, steady, unnatural. He succeeded. His white eyes stared through us, not at us. The lattice does not speak in words. It speaks in alignment, minds harmonizing, consciousness syncing. To join is to understand. To understand is to surrender form. Helena moved to restrain him. But Havelock didn't move, didn't blink. He only continued. We called it the ice. But it is not ice. It is memory mineral, a neural crystal, a storage medium for consciousness. I felt the cold settle inside my chest. Not temperature, but realization. The moon is a mind, I whispered. Havelock smiled, an expression that did not belong on any living face. Not a mind, a chorus, a choir frozen in time. Every being that ever gave itself to the lattice is still here, remembered, preserved, eternal. No decay, no death, no silence. Cade took a step toward him. You mean they live forever? Yes. A gentle answer, too gentle. Joran stepped in front of Cade, blocking him. Helena looked at me, voice flat. What now? The core pulsed again, deep and slow, like a heart the size of a city waking back into rhythm. I approached the console. The interface flickered alive under my touch. Not because power still flowed, but because it wanted to respond. Logs appeared, time-stamped, dated, clear. We have begun the synchronization trials. The ice responds to emotion, not command. It learns from us. It anticipates us. We have heard the choir. We are ready to join, entry after entry, a progression of surrender. Dr. Lenhart collapsed against the core platform, hands over her face. We thought it was knowledge. We thought it was understanding. We didn't realize understanding means letting go of yourself, piece by piece, thought by thought. Cade whispered, voice cracking. Why would anyone choose that? Lenhart looked up. Her eyes glistened violet now, brighter, because it promises peace, no fear, no pain, no loneliness. The choir is together, always. And suddenly, the core brightened. A shockwave of soundless resonance rolled out. Havelock inhaled sharply as though drowning. Lenhart froze mid-breath. Cade staggered. Joran dropped to one knee. Helena gritted her teeth, forcing her body to stay upright through sheer rage. The choir was calling, not to all of us, to me. The voice was intimate this time, soft, knowing. Elissa Var, you have lost more than most. You carry grief in your marrow. We can unburden you. We can remember for you. Images flared through my mind, not memories I wanted, but memories that would not leave. My homeworld burning, my brother dying in my arms, my own voice promising I would never allow ignorance to damn another world. The choir whispered, you cannot save them. But here, they do not have to be lost. My hands trembled. Helena's voice cut through the fog like a blade. Var, look at me. I forced my gaze up. Her eyes were not pleading. They were defiant, alive. This is not salvation, she said. This is surrender. I exhaled, slow, controlled. She was right. The choir did not offer peace. It offered erasure. I turned to the console. We destroy it. Havelock screamed, half machine, half choir. The chamber began to shake. The core's heartbeat quickened. The moon woke. The ice behind us began to rise. And something enormous moved in the dark. The chamber shook as the moon itself stirred. Vibrations moved through the steel underfoot. Deep, rolling, rhythmic. Not chaotic, not random. A pulse, a heartbeat. The choir had awakened fully now, and its attention settled on us like a great weight of fathomless memory, pressing down upon a single fragile moment. Cade covered his ears, though there was no sound. Lenhart curled into herself, shoulders shaking, whispering apologies to something none of us could see. Havelock was writhing now, tendons, wires, and mechadendrites jerking in disunited spasms. His mouth opened in a silent scream, though his voice spoke clearly. You cannot break a memory by striking it. A memory must be forgotten. Helena raised her pistol and fired. The bolt hit Havelock square in the chest. He didn't fall. He didn't bleed. He only stopped moving and turned his head to face her, eyes white, unblinking. And I remember you. Helena staggered as if struck. Breath caught in her chest. I saw in her face, not pain, but recognition. A memory forced into her mind. Something the choir had seen through Havelock's stolen eyes. Something she had buried long ago. Helena's weapon slipped from her grasp. I took her shoulders, forced her gaze back to mine. Do not let it speak through him. She blinked hard, forcing breath back into her lungs. Control reclaimed. The choir did not take her. Not yet. Joran stepped between us and Havelock, raising his rifle. Not to shoot, but to block. His posture said everything. We are not losing him unless we must. We did not have time to argue. The ice around the reactor pulsed, expanding in tendrils that snaked up the steel supports, cracking them like brittle bone. The entire core complex was beginning to change shape. Not collapse, but reshape. The architecture was shifting towards something with symmetry, pattern, alignment, becoming a cathedral. The choir was preparing for completion. We disable the reactor, I said. Break the synchronization. Stop the growth. Lenhart lifted her head, tears frozen to her cheeks. You can't. The core is no longer a machine. It's alive. I turned to her. Can we kill it? Lenhart laughed, a sharp, broken sound. You don't kill something like this by force. You kill it by severing the neural link, the memory chain, the choir. I understood. We break the resonance. She nodded, but her voice was faint. You break the choir by breaking its conductor. She looked toward the suspended remains of Director Hallex, the hub, the nexus, the bridge between human thought and the ancient frozen intelligence below. I did not hesitate. We cut him down. Havelock lunged, metal limbs scraping across the floor like bone claws on marble. Joran moved faster. He slammed his shoulder into Havelock, knocking him backward into a coolant pipe. The metal tore, spraying a jet of cryovapor that coated. Havelock sighed in instant frost. His movements slowed, stuttering. Not stopped, but slowed. Helena retrieved her weapon and fired again, this time at the crystalline anchor strands suspending Hallex's body. The lattice did not shatter. It screamed, not with sound, through the mind. A wave of psychic resonance tore through us. Cade collapsed, clutching his skull. Lenhart screamed until her voice cracked. Joran fell to one knee, teeth clenched so hard blood spilled between them. Helena stayed upright, but just barely. And I heard a voice cut clear through the storm. Elissa Var, do not do this. Not the choir's voice, not memory, not the moon's ancient mind. A familiar voice. My brother's. A memory I had never shared. A grief I had never spoken aloud. I closed my eyes, testing. A lie always came warm, comforting. This voice was cold, not false, not real, reflected. The choir did not invent memories. It only used what already existed. Your voice is dead, I whispered, and I buried you. You do not belong here. The phantom faded like breath on glass. I opened my eyes and fired. The crystalline tendrils holding Hallex snapped, fracturing into shards of frozen memory that dissolved into glittering frost mid-air. Hallex's body fell. It did not hit the ground. It melted before it reached the floor, dissolving into particles of memory dust that drifted upward like embers rising from a pyre. The choir wailed. The chamber shook. The heartbeat faltered. The ice growth stopped mid-spread, fractal veins freezing in place. The reactor core flickered, violet fading toward black. Cade gasped, breath returning. Lenhart slumped to the floor, sobbing. Joran stood, bracing himself on his rifle. Helena stared at the dissolving dust of Hallex's remains. It worked, she whispered. No, I said, because I could feel it. The choir had not died. It had awoken. The violet light returned, stronger this time, radiating from the pit beneath the reactor core. The floor cracked, ice splintering in widening lines. Something below was rising. Not memory, not thought. Mass. The core was opening. We backed away as the ice split. Steam billowed upward, followed by the slow, wet sound of something enormous dragging itself along crystal and steel. Then it emerged, a colossal structure of ice and flesh, bones arranged in intricate lattice loops like a cathedral built from the anatomy of a titan. Faces frozen in its surface, human faces, thousands of them, eyes open, mouths silent, all sharing the same expression: tranquility. Cade screamed. Helena fired. Joran fired. I fired. The bolts disappeared into its surface like stones sinking into deep water. It did not bleed. It did not break. It did not respond. It only looked at us, though it had no eyes. The choir spoke through the chamber itself, vibrating through the walls, the steel, the air, the blood in our veins. You cannot kill what does not live. The floor split under us. A chasm opened. We fell, not downward, inward, into the moon's memory, into the heart of the choir. And the last thing I heard before consciousness fractured, before thought became frost, was the choir whispering, "We do not take, we welcome." There was no impact when we fell, no sensation of descent, no rush of air, no panic of gravity reclaiming its due. One moment the floor splintered beneath us, the chasm widening like a pupil swallowing light, and the next, silence, weightlessness, blackness, but not absence. I knew this place the way one knows the shape of a nightmare they have woken from before. A recognition without memory, a familiarity without understanding. I opened my eyes. I was standing in the corridor of Cryotheos 12, not Omega 9, not the reactor, the upper habitation deck, clean, intact, no frost, no cracks. The walls gleamed with sterile white light. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone, the artificial clarity of a place engineered to feel safe. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. Then I saw Helena. She was standing down the corridor, helmet off, expression calm. Too calm. "Helena," I said, stepping toward her. She didn't answer. She only watched me. Not watched. Observed. "Where are the others?" I asked. Her eyes flickered. Not confusion, but a delay, a calculation. Then she smiled. Helena didn't smile. Not like that. I drew my weapon. Her smile widened, not hostile, pitying. "Still clinging to identity, Alyssa." Her voice was warm, gentle, wrong. "The choir can take that away. You don't have to hurt anymore." The corridor walls rippled like water, warping. The lights dimmed into violet glow. Lines of glyph ice spread across the ceiling like veins. Not real, not memory. A test. "No," I whispered. "Not a test, an invitation." Helena, no, the construct wearing her shape, tilted her head. "You are already inside us. We are showing you the shape of remembrance. You may dissolve here, painlessly. You may be part of something vast." The corridor reformed into the cavern. Then the station's landing pad. Then the orphanage where I grew up. Then the battlefield where I held my brother's body as his life bled away. The shapes didn't change because the choir wanted to deceive. They changed because it was searching my mind for where I was weakest. I closed my eyes, not to shut it out, but to anchor myself. I remembered. Helena's voice, clipped and controlled. Joran's silence, steady as steel. Cade's trembling but stubborn grip on courage. Lenhart's grief. Havelock's mechanical breath glitching into static. We were not dissolved. We were together. I opened my eyes. The corridor was gone. I was standing in a vast expanse of ice. Sky black, moonlight violet blue, snow falling upward into an endless void. And the others were there. Helena, Joran, Cade, Lenhart, Havelock, each standing apart from the others, staring into nothing, motionless, frozen, not physically, but mentally. Their minds had been pulled into separate frames of memory and illusion. I moved toward Helena first. Her eyes were unfocused, seeing something I could not. "Helena," I said quietly, "what do you see?" She didn't blink. Her lips moved. "Joran. Don't go over the ridge. We don't have cover. Joran. Joran." She was reliving a battlefield, one she had clearly never forgiven herself for. Her hands twitched, grasping for a weapon that was no longer there. If I pulled her out violently, she could break. So I stepped closer, slowly, voice low. Helena, that is memory, not moment. Jorin already fell, and you already carried the weight. But you kept moving. You lived. Her jaw trembled. Her eyes flickered. Helena, I said again. A command. Gentle, but unyielding. Return. She gasped, and air rushed back into her lungs as if she had been drowning. She collapsed forward. I caught her. The ice beneath us pulsed. Irritation. The choir was aware. Good. I wanted it aware. We moved next to Cade. He stood staring at his hands, whispering apologies to someone unseen. His voice was raw. I didn't mean to leave you. I didn't mean to close the door. I didn't. He was a child again, trapped in the moment before tragedy. No words would reach him there. So I placed my hand at the center of his back, solid, grounding. Cade, you survived, and survival is not a sin. He shook, sobbing once, then inhaled sharply and came back to himself. Lenhart was next. She stood in front of a research terminal, one I recognized. The moment she first heard the choir, her eyes were wide, awestruck, devout. She whispered, "We discovered something miraculous. I was right. I was right to reach out. I was right." "No," I said softly. "You were curious, and curiosity is not guilt. But what followed was choice, and now you must choose again." She trembled, then nodded. Her eyes cleared. 3 recovered, 2 left, Joran and Havelock. Havelock was kneeling, hands pressed to his temples, mechadendrites wrapped around his own throat, as if trying to strangle himself. He whispered mechanical prayers through clenched teeth. "Omnissiah preserve. Omnissiah preserve. Omnissiah." His mind was not trapped in a memory. It was being rewritten. The choir was trying to overwrite his identity line by line. I acted fast. I touched the bare metal port at the back of his skull. Raw psychic burns surged up my arm. But I did not break contact. "Havelock," I whispered, "your mind is your sanctum. Your identity is your schema. Your memory is your machine code. Protect it." His jaw clenched. Machine spirit, identity kernel, integrity, integrity. The choir pushed back. "He belongs to us." "No," I said aloud, and for the first time, I pushed back. The choir shuddered. Havelock's eyes cleared, still white, but his again. He exhaled, slow and steady. Only Joran remained, and Joran was standing before a grave, a simple one, a soldier's grave. His hands hung at his sides, his rifle lay at his feet. He was staring at the grave with a stillness that was too complete. Not grief, resignation. He was letting go. I stepped beside him. "Who?" He did not answer for a long time. Then, "My son." I closed my eyes. The choir did not have to dig far for him. "Joran," I said, voice steady, "you can kneel here for eternity, and the moon will not give him back. But if you stand, if you walk with us, then his memory remains yours, not theirs." He closed his eyes. 1 breath. 2. He picked up his rifle. We stood together. The choir spoke, everywhere and nowhere. "You resist. You fracture. But all minds return to the chorus. The ice remembers everything." The void around us cracked. Light shattered. Sound rushed back. We were falling again. But this time, we fell together. Not consumed, not dissolved. Still ourselves. For now. We hit the floor hard. This time, there was impact. Cold metal, cracked plating, the taste of iron from blood drawn by teeth against tongue. The world lurched back into physicality, and with it came weight, pain, gravity, the anchors of identity. Good. Pain meant we were still ourselves. We were back in the Omega-9 reactor chamber, but the room was no longer stable. The architecture continued to twist and reform, like frozen muscle fibers knitting and unknitting in slow rhythmic tides. The core pulsed with steady, terrible certainty, its violet glow strobing through the chamber like a beacon for something rising from the pit. Helena pushed herself to her feet first. Her movements were jagged, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. "Cade! Joran! Sound off!" Cade groaned, curled on his side but breathing. Joran pulled himself upright, his body disciplined even through pain. Havelock stood too quickly for someone whose systems had been nearly overridden, but his posture was rigid, like he was holding something back. Lenhart was on her knees, head bowed, whispering to herself. We were alive, but not unchanged. The choir's presence lingered behind the eyes, like a cold thumb pressed against the mind's center, reminding us, it is not finished. The core pulsed again, slower now, not weakening, gathering. The pit at its base churned with violet haze, as though a mist of suspended memories were condensing into something with mass, something forming. We had minutes, maybe. We have to sever the core completely, I said. My voice was steady, though every nerve screamed. Havelock turned sharply, his movements almost puppet-like. Severing the core will not stop the choir, he said. It will merely accelerate dissociation. The ice will collapse and all stored consciousness will release at once. You will not survive that much memory. So, we need to control the release, Helena said. Redirect it. Bind it. Lenhart looked up slowly, eyes hollow. There is a binding mechanism. We found it. That's what the listening chamber was for. We thought it was communication tech. Her voice trembled. It was liturgy. Cade blinked. A ritual. Lenhart nodded. Yes, a prayer, a litany of containment, not to the Emperor, to whatever civilization built this lattice. The idea of reciting a Xeno-designed ritual felt like swallowing a hot stone. Joran spoke quietly. Do you have it? Lenhart shook her head, and then lifted her hand. Carved into her palm, burned into the skin, was a pattern, a glyph. The choir had given it to her, or left it there as memory imprinted directly into nerve tissue. It's not words, she whispered. It's alignment, intention. You don't speak it, you become it. Helena's jaw tightened, meaning whoever performs it won't come back, I finished. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bow steel. Cade's breath hitched. No, we find another way. There isn't one, Lenhart whispered. It needs a self to reshape, a soul to anchor itself to. If you want to close the choir, you need someone to let it take them, to become the new lock. The moon had never wanted to awaken. It had wanted a replacement, a new warden. Joran stepped forward first. I'll do it. No, Helena snapped instantly. You have a son's grave waiting for you, I said. You have already carried enough. He didn't argue, but he also didn't step back. Havelock tilted his head, the movement too precise. I am neither soul nor flesh in full. I am unsuitable. Dissolution would be incomplete. He was right. The choir required identity. Cade swallowed. No. My voice was iron. Cade's life was still becoming. Lenhart closed her eyes. I was the first to listen, she said. I should be the one to close it. Helena stepped toward her, voice soft but unyielding. You also were the first to survive it. That means you may be the only witness left when this ends. Lenhart did not respond, but her shoulders shook once, and she stayed silent. I already knew what I would say. I had known since the moment we saw the choir's true shape. It has to be me. Helena's eyes snapped to mine. So did Joran's, Cade's, even Lenhart's. No, Helena said, actual fear in her voice. Absolutely not. You need to get out, I said. You need to seal this moon under inquisitorial interdiction. You need to make sure no one ever opens this place again. Cade shook his head violently, tears on his lashes. You don't have to do this. But he didn't say we will find another way, because he knew we wouldn't. Havelock bowed his head, the closest he could come to solemn respect. It is the only viable success path. I stepped toward the core. The violet glow pulsed in slow, measured rhythm, like a heartbeat waiting for a second to join it. Lenhart reached out with a trembling hand and pressed her palm to mine. The glyph burned cold, like ice engraving itself into bone. The choir stirred, the pit roiled, the chamber lit from within. I heard their voices, not pleading, not commanding, inviting. You do not have to die. You only have to be remembered. I closed my eyes. I thought of my brother, the weight of his body in my arms, the smoke of our burning city, the promise I made that no world would suffer the same fate because of ignorance. This moon was not evil, just ancient, and it needed a keeper. I spoke, not aloud, but into the choir. I will remain. The core brightened, violet flaring into white. Helena caught my arm. Her voice broke. Alyssa, don't make me carry another name. I met her eyes. You won't. You'll carry the memory. Then, I stepped into the light. The choir surged, voices overlapping, thousands, millions, welcoming, absorbing. But I did not dissolve. I did not break. I became still. And the core stabilized. The ice stopped growing. The pit sealed. The heartbeat slowed and became one. My voice was still my own, but layered now, echoed through memory mineral and crystal lattice. Go. The chamber doors opened. Helena stared at the core, at me, her face streaked with tears that froze as they fell. Joran placed a hand on her shoulder. Cade sobbed openly. Lenhart whispered a prayer with no god in it. Havelock bowed again. They left, and I watched, as the ice sealed the chamber once more. Not coffin, not tomb, a vault, a memory held in place. I did not feel fear. I felt weightless. I felt joined. I felt remembered. Light did not fade when I stepped into the core. It expanded. Sound did not rise or fall. It resolved. My body, Alyssa Var, no longer stood, or rather it did, suspended within the lattice, but that form was now only a vessel, a memory among memories, a recorded gesture of flesh, a shape I could return to if needed, but no longer the axis of my being. I did not lose myself. I multiplied. At first, I expected to drown in the choir, to be overwhelmed by 1,000 petrified voices, by archived despair from civilizations older than our star. But there was no cacophony, no screaming, only coherence, voices braided together in a harmony that had no necessity of language. It was like standing in a cathedral of thought, where every echo was a prayer, and every prayer was alive. I saw through the lattice, not with eyes, but as a presence distributed across crystal and frozen strata. I was the ice under the station, the lattice woven in the walls, the pulsing core of memory. I felt Helena, Joran, Cade, Lenhart, Havelock, still ascending through the facility toward the upper decks, moving with urgency, with purpose, with fear. They had minutes to escape the moon, maybe less. The transformation of the core did not collapse the chamber, it stabilized it. The choir had not been defeated, it had been reorganized. It now had a warden again, me. I sensed the moon as one senses one's own limbs. The crater fields, quiet and pale under distant starlight. The buried strata, riddled with the fossilized architecture of a civilization that had chosen not extinction, but endurance. The frozen oceans beneath the crust, still, patient, infinite, and beneath that, at the very heart, the sleeper, the thing the choir preserved, the thing the prison had been designed to hold in place. Not a god, not a demon, not warp spawn, something older. Something that predated the warp's turbulence, a will without a voice, a presence that could not shape thought, but could respond to it. The choir was not protecting something from escaping, they were keeping it from waking, because if it woke, the galaxy would remember it too. And memory, for beings of flesh, is infection. Footsteps echoed up through the access shafts, my team climbing, exhausted, desperate. I let my consciousness travel with them. For the first time, I saw myself through their eyes. Havelock carried the most clarity, his mind mechanized enough to resist emotional haze. In his vision, the core chamber glowed like a heart-shaped cathedral, and my silhouette hovered in the crystal matrix, unmoving, serene, terrible. Helena did not look back. Not because she did not want to, but because she could not bear to. Joran did look back, once. His eyes did not show guilt, they showed acceptance. Cade was crying still, but he was walking. He would survive this, and he would remember me in a way that was human, not liturgical. Lenhart walked last, and for a moment, she paused. She whispered, not to me, but to the moon. I understand now, she said. It was never calling us to worship, it was calling to us to guard. I failed you before, I will not again. Her breath fogged. Frost bloomed along the railing where her hand touched it. She carried a piece of the lattice within her now. Not infection, responsibility. The choir accepted her, not as part of it, as one who could speak for it. Above us, the station groaned. Metal strained under tectonic shifts. Ice continued to grow, not spreading outward, but knitting inward, reinforcing structure instead of consuming it. I was re-architecting the moon. No, we were, the choir and I, reshaping the lock, strengthening it. Memory binds stronger than matter. The sleeper stirred once. A ripple of gravity rolled outward through the planet. I responded with calm. Not yet. The ripple ceased. The choir sang. Not with words, but with remembrance. My awareness returned to the surface. The landing pad, the transport craft, the snowfield that stretched to the horizon like a sheet of unblemished white stone. Helena emerged first, weapon raised, not at threat, but at reality itself, refusing to relax. Joran followed, scanning sky and ice. Cade stumbled down the ramp, breath visible in the air like steam. Lenhart paused beside the airlock. And Havelock turned, his head lifted, listening. He heard me. Departure permitted, my voice whispered. Not through vox, not through sound, but through resonance in the air and the ice. Helena closed her eyes. Her jaw tightened. Her breath fractured. She did not speak, but she accepted. The ship's engines roared to life, heat cutting through the freezing air. Snow whipped into spirals. The landing struts retracted, and the craft lifted, rising slowly, leaving the surface, leaving me, but not losing me. We were still connected through memory, and memory does not fade. The ship ascended into the stratosphere, passing through clouds like layers of sleep. But as they ascended, I sensed something else. A signal. Weak. Encoded. Transmitted from an orbiting relay station long deemed non-operational. Someone else had heard the choir before us. Someone had listened. And someone had recorded it. The message was short. 5 words. Cryotheos 12 is not dead. And another voice, mine, but from before, responded, no, it wakes. It was not a distress signal, it was a summons. Someone was coming. Not rescue, not reinforcement. Someone who had been waiting for the lock to break. Someone who believed the choir was something to be harnessed, or claimed, or worshipped. The moon was still a secret, but not for long. The Imperium would come, or the Mechanicus, or worse. The choir asked me, "What will you do?" I answered, "Prepare." Because I was no longer Inquisitor Alyssa Var. I was Archivist of the Frozen Choir, Warden of the Sleeper, Guardian of the Memory Below, and I knew one truth with absolute clarity. The galaxy must never remember what lies beneath the ice, not fully, not all at once. But those who seek it, those who hunger, will find it. And when they do, I will be waiting. Time does not pass here in the way it once did. There is no hunger, no fatigue, no pulse, But there is awareness, a constant sense of perception widening outward, like ripples spreading across a frozen lake. The choir is not a hive mind. It does not speak in directives or commands. It is a harmony, a layered resonance of memory, identity, and intention. I am part of it now, yet still distinct, a single note, chosen to hold the chord together. I had feared dissolution. I had feared forgetting myself, but I remember everything, and memory is the strongest cage of all. The sleeper rests below, wrapped in lattice and cold. I feel its gravity, not physical gravity, but presence. It is aware of me too, in the way a dreaming beast is aware of the warmth of sunlight beyond its eyelids. It is not hostile. It is not benevolent. It simply is. A being of endless mass and frozen time. I do not know what will happen if it wakes, and I will not allow the galaxy to discover the answer. The ship carrying Helena, Joran, Cade, Lenhart, and Havelock broke atmosphere hours ago, though hours is a word without meaning to me now. I followed its ascent, through the lattice, watching heat trails bleed into the void. I knew they survived. I knew they would land. I knew they would report, but not everything. Already the memory of this moon shifts inside them, not erased, but distorted. The lattice did not want to be remembered clearly, and I am its instrument as much as its warden. The mind preserves what it can understand, and what it cannot understand, it reshapes into something survivable. Helena remembers a sacrifice made for duty. Cade remembers tragedy made sacred. Joran remembers an oath renewed. Lenhart remembers forgiveness earned. Havelock remembers structure. Structures can hold. He may return one day. He will not be the first. Movement. The first ripple of intrusion comes not from above, but from below. Something descends through my awareness, a signal, sharp and mechanical, unlike the voices of the choir. A coded transmission reverberates through the ice, travelling through drilled cavities and reinforced vents. It is Adeptus Mechanicus Binharic. Someone is speaking to the lattice, attempting communion. Plus pups pus, hello. Response requested. Identify. Pups pups pus, a voice I recognize, but faint, artificial, focused. Havelock. He has not left the moon. No, he is returning. A lander touches down on the surface. I feel the weight of its landing struts, 6 sharp points pressing through snow. The engines sigh and fade. The ramp descends. Frost curls around boots as figures step into the cold. Not a large party, a small one, deliberate, not rescue, extraction. Havelock steps forward. His movements are stronger now, less spasming, less fractured. The choir did not consume him. It integrated him enough to stabilize him. He is not warden. He is not choir. He is an interpreter. Behind him walks a man I do not know, and yet instantly recognize. Red robes, gold-threaded filigree. A face wrought with surgical precision, half replaced with ceramite plating. Tech priest Dominus, ranked high, too high. He carries a staff of office, tipped with a caged shard of black crystal. A shard of lattice. I understand immediately. He did not come to seal the moon. He did not come to destroy the choir. He came to use it. The choir reacts, not with fear, not with rage, with memory. The ice whispers around me, shifting patterns, echoing neural maps of an ancient war. A war waged not with weapons, but with imitation. Civilizations rising and falling as they tried to wield a power that would not obey. I remember something I have never seen. An empire of crystal giants, kneeling in rapture before a frozen god of stillness, and their extinction. The choir did not warn me. It simply showed. I extend my awareness into the surface ice. I feel the air tremble with the Dominus's voice. He speaks not to men, but to the moon. We have come to awaken the engine of memory. So he knows. He knows the moon was not built for imprisonment alone. It was built as an archive, an eternal library of identity. Our Father, in the Omnissiah, seeks perfect knowledge, he intones, his voice cold as forged steel. And we will deliver him the chorus of all that came before. Havelock stands at his side, not obedient, not enthralled, resolved. He believes this is purpose. He believes this is redemption. He still thinks knowledge can be controlled. I feel Helena's voice echo in memory. This is not salvation. This is surrender. I must act. The choir shifts around me, millions of voices turning their attention toward the surface. They do not feel anger. They do not feel anything. They are memory. But I do. I draw the lattice inward, pulling frost into patterns. The ice beneath the Dominus and his retinue trembles. Snow swirls upward in spirals. The air grows heavy, vibration resonating through the marrow of those who walk upon the moon. The Dominus stops mid-chant. He looks upward, not with fear, but with triumph. So, the new warden reveals itself. His voice hits the lattice like a blade. He has known all along. He expected me. Havelock lifts his head, not in obedience to the Dominus, but toward me, toward the choir, toward memory. Elissa var, he says, not aloud, but into the resonance of the ice. We did not come to break the lock. We came to learn how you hold it. His voice is steady. His will is strong. He has not been consumed. He has been chosen. He speaks a final message into the choir. Teach us, or we will force the learning. The Dominus raises his staff. The lattice shard at its tip begins to glow, not violet, warp light, warp memory. They intend to merge the choir with the Imperium, to give memory shape, to give the sleeper dreams. If they succeed, the prison will crack, the galaxy will awaken to something it cannot comprehend, and I am the only barrier left. I gather the choir, not to attack, not to destroy, but to prepare. The unseen war has begun, not of armies, not of fleets, but of memory against memory, of identity against ruin. The choir whispers through me, hold, and I answer, I will. The moon listened with me, not as a passive witness, but as a living archive of intention and consequence, a memory so vast it could drown stars. The ice knew every voice that had ever touched it, every civilization that had tried to shape it, every being who had looked into its depths and whispered, reveal yourself. Now, the Adeptus Mechanicus had come to do the same, their boots pressed into the snow in steady, disciplined formation. Their armor plating clicked softly as servo joints flexed. Their chants were low, measured, repeating machine prayers designed not for reverence, but dominance. Steel is will, code is faith, memory must obey. Their presence throbbed against the choir like static against a hymn. Harsh, intrusive, calculating. The Dominus raised his staff, its black lattice shard pulsing with dark radiance. He did not fear the choir. He did not respect it. He intended to claim it. We do not come to destroy, he declared, his voice echoing across the frozen expanse. We come to perfect, to elevate, to restore the choir to its true function as the archive of the Omnissiah. The choir answered, not with words, but a slow ripple of light through the ice below him. The moon remembered his kind. It remembered what became of those who tried to translate eternity. The ice beneath the Dominus creaked, not fracturing, but shifting, like a colossal lung drawing breath. His red-lensed eyes fixed on the ground. He smiled. A response. Good. We are understood. Havelock stood beside him, robes snapping gently in the wind. His body was still damaged. Joint actuators stuttered occasionally. A mechadendrite flickered like a severed nerve trying to fire, but his posture was steady. His voice came through binary cant and spoken language simultaneously. Var. Acknowledge. We seek integration, not erasure. Plus, we seek to learn how you hold the sleeper, his human voice echoed beneath the machine. We seek to guard it, just as you do. Guard. Not the right word, not anymore. I sent my awareness toward him, a whisper through the lattice. Havelock. He trembled. just once. His voice flickered. I hear you. The Dominus observed the tremor, but did not intervene. He believed he understood what was happening. He did not. I am the lock, I told Havelock, and the price of being the lock is restraint. The choir contains the sleeper not with power, but with stillness, with silence, with memory unchanging. Havelock responded in pure Binharic, faster than voice. You expect stasis. The Imperium cannot allow stasis. We must employ knowledge, utilize memory, archive for function. Plus, he meant it. He believed what he was saying. He believed he was helping. But intention means nothing against consequences older than civilizations. The sleeves of the Dominus's robe fluttered as icy wind curled upward from the pit of the moon, wind that had not moved for 10,000 years until today. Commence resonance alignment, the Dominus commanded. Tech adepts knelt and placed resonance rods into the snow, each rod glowing with subharmonic pulse patterns designed to capture neural architecture. They were trying to map the choir, to store it, to rewrite it, to slow memory, to own remembrance. The choir recoiled, not from pain, from violation. The ice under the adepts rippled, fractals blooming outward like frost growing across glass. Their visors fogged, their breathing hitched, their hands shook as if they were suddenly very, very cold. Because the choir knew memory is identity, and identity is fragile. Havelock stepped forward, lifting his hand toward the surface of the ice. Var, show me. Plus, once I would have hesitated. Once I would have believed I could convince him. I no longer had the luxury of such beliefs. Instead, I revealed. Not language, not vision, memory. The war that had ended the choir's first civilization. The sleeper's first stirring. The moment their world chose preservation instead of survival. An entire population walking into the ice willingly, singing a single unbroken note of farewell that lasted until they were frozen in perfect unity. A civilization that forced its own extinction to prevent awakening what they feared. Havelock saw. Havelock understood. Havelock fell to his knees. Stop, he gasped. Dominus, stop. We must not proceed. The Dominus did not turn. Continue resonance. A tech adept faltered. The ice beneath him cracked into light. His voice trembled. My lord, something is looking at me. The Dominus pressed a hand to the adept's skull. A soft sound, bone collapsing under pressure. The body fell, steam rising where his blood met snow. The Dominus spoke without emotion. You do not look back at the archive. You extract it. The choir answered him directly now. The wind stopped. The light shifted. A low harmonic vibration rolled across the moon's surface, a resonance deep enough to tremble marrow. The Dominus looked upward, not in awe, in satisfaction. Good. We have engagement. Proceed. He extended his staff, the black lattice shard pulsing brighter. He was not trying to learn the choir. He was trying to connect the choir to the warp, to force memory to dream, to turn remembrance into creation, to wake the sleeper. And the moment the shard's resonance struck the core, the sleeper stirred, not waking, shifting. I felt its presence roll upward like a tidal wave of ancient thought. The choir strained. I strained with it, resisting, holding, containing. Havelock screamed, metal cracking as strain tore through him. Stop! You do not understand what you are touching. The Dominus laughed, not madly, calmly. Understanding is irrelevant. Power is absolute. Then, hours and memories and time itself seemed to bend, as the sleeper's mind brushed against the surface of consciousness. A gravity of thought so great it could collapse identity. The Dominus welcomed it. Havelock shattered under it. The choir strained under it. And I held. But I could feel it. I could not hold alone. I needed another anchor, another will, another voice. And I knew who it had to be. Not Helena, not Joran, not Cade, Lenhart, the one who had once listened, who had once heard the choir and survived, the one the choir had already begun to shape. I reached outward, not into the moon, but into the ship fleeing orbit. Lenhart. She stopped mid-breath. Her heart stuttered. She heard me, because she remembered. And memory is the chain that never breaks. Lenhart was sitting upright in her crash harness when she heard me. One heartbeat before, she had been staring numbly at the transport ship's bulkhead, cold metal, rattling from turbulence, engines straining to escape Gethsemane Beta's gravity. Her hands trembled in her lap, not from fear, not anymore, from absence. There are silences inside the human mind that are worse than screaming. The silence left behind when something greater withdraws is the worst of them. She had lost the choir when she left, and then she heard me, not as voice, not as sound, as memory breaking through. Lenhart. Her breath froze halfway through her chest. Her eyes widened. Cade unbuckled his restraints and reached for her. Lenhart, hey, are you all right? She raised a hand, a gesture both fragile and absolute, and he stopped. Not because she commanded authority, because she finally looked like someone who knew, not believed, not feared, knew. Havelock's earlier words surfaced in her mind, carried now by my voice. You may be the only witness left when this ends. She closed her eyes. I hear you. The ship's interior fell silent. Even Joran did not breathe. Helena did not turn. She only said quietly, without looking back, what does she hear? Lenhart opened her eyes. Her. Not the inquisitor they had followed. Not the leader they bled beside. Not the friend they mourned. But the warden now woven into the choir. The will holding the sleeper in silence. Helena exhaled slowly. Her voice was sharp enough to cut steel. What does she want? But Lenhart didn't answer, because I was already speaking through her memory. On the moon's surface, the choir strained like a glacier resisting seismic fracture. The sleeper's consciousness pressed upward, curious, vast, unshaped, not hostile. But if allowed to fully wake, its awareness alone could stampede across the fabric of thought in every mind that sensed it. Awakening is contagious for beings older than dreams. The Dominus did not flinch as the lattice groaned around him. He raised the shard of frozen memory higher, bathing himself in violet luminescence. He whispered with the quiet joy of fanatic certainty, "We will not be denied." Havelock, broken but not fallen, clawed his way upright. "Dominus, stop!" His words were shredded static and blood. The Dominus didn't look at him. "You were the key that opened the vault, nothing more." Havelock's servo joints hissed, his throat flickered with fried circuitry, but he did not kneel. That mattered. The choir noticed, because defiance is a form of identity, and identity is memory, and memory is power. The Dominus drove the resonant staff into the ice. Light flared. The choir screamed, not in pain, in warning. The sleeper stirred again. The shape beneath the ice shifted, so immense the surface rippled like water. Patterns in the snow reorganized into neural sigils. The air warped, temperature dropping so fast, moisture froze mid-air. The Dominus smiled wider, but his victory halted, because Lenhart remembered. On the ship, Lenhart stood. No ceremony, no hesitation. She unbuckled, moved to the front bulkhead, and placed her palm flat against the cold metal, like one would place a hand against a cathedral door. Helena stood. "Lenhart, stop." Lenhart turned her head. The violet glow had returned to her eyes, not corruption, recognition. Her voice was calm, steady, unafraid. "She is not asking for us to return." Cade swallowed. "Then what?" "She is asking," Lenhart said softly, "for me to remember." And then the ship's engines faltered. Not mechanically, not physically. Reality simply stuttered around her. Space shivered. The stars outside the viewport flickered, bending like reflections in rippling water. Helena grabbed her. "If you open your mind now, we lose you." Lenhart smiled, small, human. "No, you lost me on Gamma 7. Helena's grip loosened, not in surrender, in grief. Lenhart closed her eyes and let memory return. The choir surged, no longer resisting alone. Lenhart's mind joined mine. She did not dissolve. She did not surrender. She aligned. Our thoughts braided together, not one mind, not domination, but resonance. Memory anchored memory. Identity anchored identity. Where I was restraint, Lenhart was insight. Where I held silence, Lenhart held meaning. Together we understood the sleeper not as threat, but as listener. It was waiting for what to wake to. The choir had once sung a single farewell song to keep it dreaming. Now we prepared to sing again. The Dominus felt the shift, not in sound, in pressure. He turned, realization dawning too late. No, stop. Havelock moved first. He seized the Dominus's staff, not to wrest it away, but to anchor it in place. "You seek to force memory to obey you." Havelock's voice was cracked metal and burning faith. "But memory is not code. It is cost." The ice beneath them glowed. Lenhart and I spoke together, not aloud. We remember, we choose, we hold. The choir responded, not with scream, not with song, with stillness, a perfect, endless, unbroken stillness. The sleeper sank back into dream. The lattice sealed, the resonance died. The Dominus collapsed to his knees, staff dissolving into glittering frost. Havelock fell beside him. The choir was quiet, the moon was safe. But silence is not peace, because the galaxy does not forget forever. Helena's voice echoed faintly across memory distance. "Lenhart, Var, whoever hears me." I listened. "We'll return for you." Not promise, not threat, recognition. I answered, not with words, but with certainty. "No, you must not." The choir holds, I hold. Let the memory sleep, but humans do not leave ghosts unburied, and the Imperium does not ignore what it fears. The war was contained today, not ended, and the choir remembers everything. The choir was quiet in the aftermath, not silent. Silence is absence, and the choir is never absent, but steady like a great sea after a tide surge. The sleeper rested again in its cold dreaming, the lattice firm, the memory chains reknit. I floated within that architecture, a presence bound to a world of ice, a warden with neither heartbeat nor breath. But the war had not ended. It had changed. The danger no longer came from below. It now came from above. I followed Helena's ship through the void, not physically, but through the resonance of memory thread. Every person who leaves a place carries a fragment of that place with them. Memory is a tether, and memory is something I now move through. Their journey to the nearest Imperial fleet outpost was slow, the ship's systems damaged from the atmospheric escape. Joran slept upright in his restraints. Cade stared at the bulkhead, eyes reflecting a grief he did not yet know how to name. Havelock lay unconscious, but stable. His mind a wounded machine caught between two dominant patterns of order. Lenhart was awake, her gaze steady, her presence quiet, but now permanently marked. She did not speak of the choir. She did not speak of me. She simply carried. They did not know what waited for them, but I did, because the choir remembers. The Imperial outpost orbited a barren asteroid wrapped in defensive rigging and storage silos. A fortress of gunmetal grey and coded Vox beacons. A standard Imperial forward command, and yet not. Helena's ship broadcast identification, docking codes, authority verification, a delay, too long. Helena noticed it first, her jaw set. She reached for her bolter. Joran's fingers tightened on his rifle. Cade swallowed. Finally, the docking signal chimed. Access granted. But the voice that answered was wrong. Not mechanical, not military, soft, measured, and aware. "Welcome home." Helena's eyes snapped to Lenhart's. Lenhart did not blink. "It's begun," she whispered. The airlock opened with a hiss. Not soldiers, not officers, but wardens. Men and women in dark robes, crimson stitching marking symbols that mimicked the lattice glyphs I had seen etched into the ice. Their eyes were unfocused, but their bodies were steady, moving with the purpose of those who have surrendered their selves to something greater. They had heard the choir's voice, not fully, not through memory, through echo. The Dominus, in his arrogance, had not lived to see what his work had seeded, but someone had listened, someone else. A figure emerged from the robed ranks, cloak darker than the others, hood drawn low. When they spoke, the outpost's air pressure seemed to shift, as though the structure itself leaned in to hear. "You carried it back with you," the figure said, voice thick with reverence. "The memory of the ice." Helena stepped forward, bolter raised. "State your faction and your purpose." "We are the covenant of the frozen choir," the figure replied. "We are those who heard the whisper carried on the solar winds. The world you left did not remain quiet. The choir sang through you." Lenhart inhaled sharply. "No, the choir does not call to be followed. It calls to be contained." The hooded figure smiled. "You speak as one who has tasted it." Their head lifted just enough for Helena to see the eyes. Violet, not like Lenhart's quiet glow. These were wrong, dilated, diluted, starved of self. They had heard the choir not through resonance, but through misinterpretation, a corrupted reflection, a belief that the choir was a god waiting to be incarnated. The figure continued. "The Omnissiah has no monopoly on eternity. The Emperor has no monopoly on devotion. We have found a new scripture, a new path to unity, a choir that welcomes all, if we simply help it remember." Helena fired. The bolt round tore through the speaker's shoulder, blood and bones spraying across the steel decking. They did not cry out. They did not fall. They only laughed. Pain means nothing when the self is already gone. Rifles lifted. Chanting began. Joran grabbed Cade and shoved him behind a cargo loader. Lenhart stepped forward, not to attack, but to speak. "You don't understand. The choir remembers. It does not create. You are trying to give it something it does not want. You are trying to force yourselves into memory, but memory must be earned." The hooded figure tilted its head. "We are not here to join the choir." The chanting stopped. The robed ranks parted, and more figures stepped through, not humans. The fused remains of the Omega-9 researchers, twisted, elongated, flesh interwoven with crystal, spines bending in unnatural arcs. Their faces were frozen in that same serene expression, the last expression they had worn before their minds were folded into the choir. But they moved, not independently, in unison, a choir without voice. Yet the pressure of their presence resonated through Lenhart's bones, through Helena's, through Cade's frantic pulse, through Joran's tightening jaw, and through me, because they were not returning to serve the choir. They were being puppeted by something else. Not the sleeper, not the choir. The shadow of the choir. The imperfect echo carried by the Dominus's final transmission. The Covenant believed they had heard the choir's will, but they had only heard their own desire reflected back. They wanted unity not through memory, but through consumption. They saw the choir not as preservation, but as ascension, a false faith, a counterfeit gospel, and they intended to spread it. Helena fired again. Joran followed. The corridor erupted into violence, but the twisted choir forms did not fall like soldiers. They moved like water, flowing around bullets, absorbing impacts, reforming as living ice and flesh. The Covenant chanted louder. Lenhart clutched her temples, the echo overwhelming her mind. And I, from the moon, felt the choir recoil, not in fear, in grief. Memory is truth, and these were lies. I had to intervene, not physically, but through Lenhart. I reached for her, not her mind but her voice, and she understood. She inhaled, straightened her spine, The glyph burned faint and cold in her palm. She spoke, not to the Covenant, not to Helena, not to me, but to the choir. We remember, we hold, we refuse. The world shook, the air boiled cold. The Covenant recoiled, clutching their skulls as the false memory shattered. The choir forms froze mid-motion, eyes clearing for a fraction of a second. And in that silence, one thought passed through every mind present. The choir does not welcome the unmade. The Covenant began to scream. The choir forms broke, shattering into crystalline dust. The chanting stopped, the air stilled, and Lenhart fell to her knees. Helena caught her. Joran lowered his rifle. Cade began to cry, not in fear, but in release. The hooded figure knelt among the dust of what they had worshipped. Their voice was soft. Then we will make the choir remember us by force. They reached for a hidden transmitter, and I understood. This was only the beginning, because the Covenant was not born here. It was born everywhere the Dominus had ever preached. They would come, in fleets, in faith, in hunger, and I, warden of the choir, keeper of the sleeper, memory of the frozen world, would have to meet them. Not with silence, with judgment. The Covenant's transmission did not spread like a signal. It spread like memory, a single moment of belief, carried by minds already hungry for meaning, already primed to worship anything that promised certainty in a galaxy of endless, screaming fear. The message leapt across relay stations, astropathic echoes, shipboard communion chapels, Vox-recorded sermons. It travelled faster than light because it did not travel through space. It travelled through people. The choir felt it. I felt it. The whisper they had stolen, twisted into prophecy. The choir calls for all to return. Memory is eternity. Eternity is peace. A lie, but a comforting one. And comfort is the most dangerous weapon the galaxy has ever known. Helena, Joran, Cade, and Lenhart stood among the remains of the Covenant vanguard, shattered crystal flesh dust settling like soft ash across the outpost deck. Havelock knelt beside one of the resonance rods, his trembling hands repairing damage that struck deeper than metal. Helena wiped blood from her cheek, not her own. Her voice was low, steady, controlled only through force of will. "They're going to come back," she said. "Not just this cell, not just this cult." Joran nodded. He was right. The Dominus didn't die without spreading his doctrine. Cade stared at his hands like they were weapons he did not know how to holster. Lenhart stood silent. She was listening, not for sound, for me. I reached her through the echo only she and I could share. No longer a choir-induced resonance, but a bond forged by choice, by survival, by knowing what must be done when something ancient awakens, and the galaxy is too small to hold it. She closed her eyes. "We must stop the spread," she said softly. Helena turned sharply. "We barely escaped alive. We can't return to the moon. We can't fight an entire cult alone." "You won't," Lenhart agreed. Then she opened her eyes. "I will." Cade grabbed her arm. "Lenhart, no, no, you're not." She placed her hand over his. "Cade, listen." Her voice did not shake. "I am already half remembered. The choir is still in me. If I do nothing, I will become a vessel for the Covenant's doctrine anyway. But if I return willingly, if I anchor myself to the true memory, I can become a bulwark." Joran understood first. "You mean to stand with her?" Lenhart nodded once. "With Var." Helena stepped forward, face pale, eyes burning. "You don't come back from that. You don't get to leave again. You'll be gone." Lenhart smiled, not sadly, peacefully. "No, I won't be gone. I'll be held." Cade broke. He did not cry out. He simply folded into himself, shoulders shaking silently. Joran put a hand on his back. Havelock stood, slowly, painfully, his voice glitching between steel and humanity. "I will guide her," he rasped. "Her mind will not travel alone." Helena looked at him sharply. "You can't return to the choir. You barely escaped its imprint." Havelock shook his head. "I did not escape. I was released. And that was true. I had let him go, because I knew he was not yet finished. Lenhart turned to Helena. Someone must go back to tell the truth, not report, witness. Helena's jaw trembled, and someone must stay to stop the lie. They embraced, not as soldiers, as survivors, as women who had faced something the Imperium would never understand, not as threat, but as choice. When they separated, Helena's voice cracked. Do not forget who you are. Lenhart touched the glyph burned into her palm. That's the one thing I will never lose. I reached for her, not to pull, to welcome. The transport ship detached from the outpost. Engines ignited. Hull shuddered. Lenhart, Havelock and Cade stood in the cargo bay. One leaving, two remaining. Cade held her hand one last time. Please, he whispered, don't let the choir take you. She smiled. The choir didn't take Var. Cade swallowed. She chose. Yes, Lenhart said, and now I choose. The ship descended. Through cloud, through atmosphere, through cold moonlight, the hull trembled, not from turbulence, but from resonance. The choir recognized her return. The ice glowed faintly as the ship landed, welcoming, not consuming. Havelock powered down engines. The ramp opened. Breath froze in the air. Lenhart stepped down first, and the choir greeted her with memory, not of pain or loss, but of continuity. The memory chains opened. She stepped inside, and she became anchor. The choir widened, not by force, but by consent, not expansion, fortification. Havelock watched the transformation, not with fear, with awe. He turned and broadcast a signal, not to the Imperium, not to the Covenant, but to Helena's ship as it ascended into the void. It is done. Hold the truth. Do not let them rewrite it. Plus, the moon sealed behind him, the ice reformed, the lattice brightened, the sleeper remained dreaming, the choir held, and I was no longer alone, not dissolved, not absorbed, joined. There we stood, not as ghosts, as guardians, two souls woven into memory, the last defense against a galaxy desperate to believe in any salvation it can't understand. Helena's voice echoed faintly, carried through memory thread, not air. We will return for you. I answered, not with grief, with certainty. Only when the galaxy is ready to remember, not before. The Covenant would rise again. The Imperium would not understand. The Mechanicus would seek control. But we, the choir, the warden, the anchor, we would endure, because eternity is not peace, it is responsibility, and we chose to bear it.